So many of us have dozens of story ideas, but when it comes time to choose just one, we freeze. And what's worse is that when we finally do pick a story idea, there comes a point in time where it feels like it was the wrong one or it's not coming together. So we abandon it and go to choose another one. And we end up with 6 or more half-finished draft and no finished book to show for it. So if that is you, today we're going to talk about how do you brainstorm ideas, pick one idea that you're going to stick with and follow through the whole way. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to Heart Breathings. My name is Sarra Cannon. I am the author of 30 books, currently serializing my 31st book over on my second YouTube channel if you want to come hang out over there. But we are gearing up for November's Rough Draft Challenge, and I would love to have you join us here. So make sure you're subscribed, and I'm going to give you lots of great tips as we move on. But let's get down to business, because I know so many of us have been stuck in this loop of trying to find the perfect idea, doubting it once we do choose, and not being able to see it through because it doesn't feel like it's the right one. So why do we keep ending up in this cycle? So number one is often just a fear that we've picked the wrong idea. What if this isn't the one that's going to sell? What if this isn't the right one? What if I don't have the skill for this? Maybe I'm not cut out for it. Or then we see what other people are doing and we're thinking, oh, I should be writing something like that. And we move on to the next shiny idea. Another reason that we sometimes have this stress over picking one is that we're afraid we're going to waste time. So there's often this feeling, especially since there's such fast publishers out there, people that are writing multiple books a year and getting them out as fast as possible. There can be this feeling of like, I have been struggling for a while. I really want to be a writer. I don't want to waste any more time. And so you feel this pressure of, I have to pick the perfect idea, the one that's going to pop off and be the big idea for me. And that just makes it harder and harder to choose, because unless you are hiding a crystal ball somewhere in your home, there's really no way to know which idea is going to be the absolute best, most efficient idea. You just have to choose one and keep going. There's also that bit of a dopamine rush that comes from planning something new and the idea of a new story, something that sounds exciting, something that when we're sitting here planning it and thinking about it, sounds like it's going to be so much easier and so much more fun than the really hard book that we've been working on for a while. So if any of this resonates with you, just know that it's normal. You're not alone. This is not something that is only happening to you, and you are not flawed as a person or as a writer. This happens to all of us, but we gotta start pulling up some tools for how to get past it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to give you 4 steps for choosing your best idea, getting started with it, and actually sticking to it to completion. First step: brainstorming your ideas. Now, it's totally possible that you already have a notebook full of ideas and you've already been kind of thinking through what it is you want to write, or you already have a set of ideas that you keep jumping around between. That's great. But also give yourself the gift of 10, 20, 30 minutes, set a timer, and write down every single partially finished project that you might want to return to, every idea that keeps just coming up that you cannot let go, every story that you've been kind of talking to friends about or noodling around inside your brain. Write it all down. There is a clarity that comes when you actually take them out of your brain and you see them on a list. It is a visual way to process, whereas when it's all just in your head, it's hard to begin to sort through them because it's just this big jumble of ideas like, oh, this one, this one, this one. When you write it down as a concrete idea, okay, there's this romance, there's this mystery, there's this sci-fi idea, you start to have more power in terms of being able to sort through them, figure out which one is best. Now, if you are sitting here and you're thinking, I don't actually have that many ideas, I want to write, but I don't know where to come up with the best ideas or the right ideas, I have a few proven methods that have helped me in the past. So I'm going to just sort of spout these out for you. But if you want to go a little bit more in depth, I did start a video series a while back that was all about brainstorming great ideas, and it came with a workbook as well. So I will link that for you down below. And if you want the free workbook, along with all of our other free resources like a PREPTOBER planner and some other things that I'm going to talk about, like how to finish your novel toolkit, go ahead and sign up for my newsletter list, and that is going to be in the description down below. So before we get into the brainstorming process, there's a few just kind of tips that I have for you as you get into the mood. One is to get yourself into a space that feels creative and exciting. So for some of you, that might be a coffee shop. For some of you, that might be your back porch with a nice cozy cup of tea, or it might be your desk or a place that you've created that feels really clean. Like clean off your desk, make everything less distractible, and get yourself excited and inspired. So you might start out with like watching a favorite episode of something that is related to your genre, reading a book that is in your favorite genre or an author that inspires you, watching some YouTube videos that get you pumped and excited, something that fills your well a little bit so that you have an excess or overflow of creative energy and you feel like you're in the mood to come up with ideas. Because one of the worst things you can do is feel stressed and then sit down and be like, okay, now I got to come up with 10 great ideas. That's not the best creative environment. So find yourself a calm or creative environment and get yourself in the mood before you start. Another thing that can be super helpful is to designate a creative brainstorming partner. So find a friend here in the Heart Breathings community, call up one of your best friends who also likes stories similar to you, get on a Zoom call, whatever it is, go to coffee with them and say, okay, I'm going to take my notebook and we're just going to bounce ideas off each other. And sometimes that can be helpful for also sorting through the ideas. And sometimes when you say it out loud, you can kind of tell, well, that's not really a well-formed idea, or I don't really like that. But none of these are absolute that you have to do. I just want to get you kind of in the brainstorming mood. So here are some of the methods that have worked for me if you want to brainstorm great ideas. One, make a list of all of the favorite movies, games, TV shows, books that you've read, series that you love, commercials, like literally any type of story, manga, anime, anything that you've watched, read, consumed before that really inspired you and made you immediately start to think of new ideas. Once you start making these lists of all of your top 10 favorites, or as many of your favorite books that you've read recently that you can think of, you may find that as you start scanning that list, there are patterns that pop up like, oh my gosh, I really love these strong found family type stories. I should write a found family type of story. Because the things that you love and the things that are exciting to you that you like to consume are more likely to be the kinds of things that you're going to stick with when it comes to writing your own story. And one of the biggest mistakes that you can make, in my opinion, is to write something just because other people currently are liking it. So if you said, oh, everybody's reading and writing romantasy right now, that's what I should write because it's the most marketable thing. That's not the worst advice in the world, but it is if you can't write romantasy because you don't enjoy writing it. Find something that you really love in the things that you consume. Like look at it like you're searching for clues in the things that you like, the things that you consume. What's the vibes that you like? Write down the mood of the types of stories that you write. Do you like things that break your heart, things that make you laugh, things that you can't put down, things that scare you? And start making lists of your favorite heroes, heroines, types of stories, tropes, genres, and see if there's a pattern that emerges. Then once you've made a little bit of leeway on those different patterns, start to brainstorm ideas within that same vein, where you could say, oh, I love scary stories that are also about found family. What if? So that's my second tip, is start playing the what if game and just start a timer and say, I'm going to challenge myself to come up with 10 to 20 ideas based on what if, and just start riffing. You can do this with yourself. You can do it inside a document so you feel like you're having a conversation with yourself. You can do this with a friend, but just start thinking, okay, I love scary stories with found family. What if a group of college students had to investigate a haunting for a PhD course or something, and they all go into this haunted house, and you have a mix of people who believe in ghosts and people who don't, and throughout the night they're going to experience some strange things inside this mansion. Like literally just came up with that. It doesn't have to be the most original story. And this is kind of a side tip, is I think sometimes when we're brainstorming ideas we think, oh, that's been done before. Well, yeah, like every story's been done before. You don't want to do an exact replica of something someone else has done, but there are no new stories under the sun. I'm sure you've heard that before. we all get inspired by other stories, and then we put our own twist on it. We put our own little spark to it, our own characters in it, our own conflict in it. But it's okay if the premises that you're drawn to are all very similar. So I'm currently writing a story that has a lot of pieces of Gladiator in it, but in a fantasy world that is a little bit more like the Hunger Games, but it also has more fantasy than the Hunger Games, which is more of a dystopian story. So it's got elements of lots of different things, and I have mashed that up and created my own Gladiator style fantasy. And so I can pull inspiration from lots of different stories, but I'm not writing anyone else's story. And you can do the same. Don't judge yourself based on whether this sounds ridiculous or it's been done before or it's never been done before. Just allow yourself this 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long you give yourself, allow yourself that time to just, no judgment, just get the stories on the page. And you might be surprised at the ideas that come up, but start a timer, ask yourself what if, and just see what comes up, see what feels fun. Another place that you can find really great inspiration is current events, the news, stories of the wild. So for example, if we go back to the idea of, you want to write a horror novel, you might go and look in the news for any real ghost story type things, true crime type things. And you might say, what is happening in the real world, or what strange things have happened that people have reported with ghosts in the past that I could take inspiration from and turn in my own way with a new story. Like, for example, if you had a plane crash where there was one single survivor, what if that was your character? What if you had someone who saw something interesting in the sky and that is a real news story and you take it and you make your own story out of it? Or what if you heard about somebody, if we go to contemporary story, somebody who married at 92, their long lost high school best friend. So you could see those real life personal interest stories and see if anything gets sparked for a story of your own. And that can come from news articles, TikToks, pretty much anything. The key there is not to let yourself just get immersed in reading other people's stories and doom scrolling. So give yourself a set of parameters where you say, I'm only going to research true crime or ghost stories, or I'm only going to research interesting personal interest love stories, and I'm going to give myself 1 hour to do it and write down any ideas that come from it. A fourth way to brainstorm ideas is to just play what I call the bounce game, which is grabbing a partner and bouncing ideas off of each other. This is very similar to the what if game, but it's a matter of doing it with a partner so that you could say, okay, what if a group of kids go into a haunted house? And then your partner says, well, what if they are all just meeting each other for the first time? And then you take that idea and you turn it into something even new. Okay, what if they're all just meeting each other for the first time, but they got there because they were invited, because they're all influencers who have been invited to the opening of this house, and they're all supposed to be recording vlogs of it. So you could just keep bouncing those ideas off of each other and going deeper and deeper and deeper with the story until you land on something that sounds fun. And then when you're like, okay, well, I know somebody who's doing an idea similar to that, or I don't actually want to go that horror, or I don't like the influencer angle, let's try something new. And then you start with a new premise. Okay, what if there was a boy and a girl who fell in love when they were kids and then got separated because of a Great World War? Then your friend says, okay, and what if they something else? And then what if, and you just keep bouncing the ideas and you just see it as a bounce, 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 as if you're adding on to someone's idea. Kind of like that old game of telephone, or something where you had to start a sentence and someone had to continue the story and somebody else did. That's kind of what the bounce game is like. Like I said, if you want to go a little deeper with this, then go ahead and watch the video that I'll link down below about creating lists and coming up with new ideas. Plus I have a PDF. It's called Brainstorming Great Ideas. It's in my Heart Breathings resource library. So if you're on my list, just search inside the resource library for great ideas. If you are not on my list yet, just sign up from the link in the description box below. Some of the tricks to these brainstorming sessions can be to use a timer. So you can use a timer on your phone. If you don't want to get distracted by your phone, you can use it like a kitchen timer or something. And you can say, okay, I'm only giving myself 25 minutes and I'm going to think through these ideas, and I'm not going to allow any distractions, and I'm not going to allow myself to overthink it. I'm just going to get as many down rapid fire as I can. The reason that a timer can help is because it just focuses you in and it gives you a deadline, which creates just this external bit of like, okay, got to get it done energy. So using a timer can be super helpful. Giving yourself a challenge to come up with a certain number of ideas. So instead of just being like, okay, I came up with 2 and that's good enough, give yourself a challenge to push beyond what you've thought of before. Because one of the reasons you might not be sticking with ideas and seeing it through is because you haven't really gotten to anything that feels true to you or authentic or unique enough or exciting enough to keep moving forward. So get through those first 5 or 6 ideas, which might be kind of meh, and then start pushing yourself for something that sounds a little bit more exciting or something you haven't thought of before or a premise that's really high concept. And then once you get to 10, 15 ideas, you might start to come up with some really good nuggets that you've never had before. Another tip that can be helpful is to go ahead and choose a genre or a style that you want to think through in terms of your ideas. Because when you are all over the place and you've got one sci-fi and one fantasy and one contemporary, it can be a lot harder to do step 2, which is going to be sorting through those ideas and picking the one that you want. It can be helpful for you to go ahead before you start your brainstorming session and say, okay, this is the kind of story I'm most interested in writing right now. So all of my ideas are going to be contemporary romances or mysteries or whatever it may be. Okay, step 2 is to actually test your ideas to tell which one is the best one for where you are right now. So I'm going to give you a series of tests. The first test is the emotional charge test. So this one's really easy. You just take your list, and as you go through them, give yourself just 5 or 10 seconds to think through it. Close your eyes and think, how do I feel about this story of kids going into a haunted house or of these people that are meeting each other for a second chance romance? How does that make me feel? And pay attention to how it feels like in your stomach, in your heart, in your brain. Does it feel exciting? Does it have an emotional charge to it where you're like, actually, I'm really excited to tell this story, or actually this feels like something that I would really find fun? Test the emotional charge. Give each idea a rating from 0 to 10. If it's a 0, no real emotional charge or interest, discard that idea. If it's a 5 or more, highlight it. If you have something that's all the way up at a 10, star it, highlight it. That might be your story. Test number 2 is the longevity test. So if you take just like already, if you've sorted out some of the ideas that had a low emotional charge, then now you can look at the ideas that are remaining and say, okay, longevity, do I care about this story enough to sit with it for the next several months, years, whatever? So this month, actually next week, I am about to celebrate the 15th anniversary of my very first novel, Beautiful Demons. And I am still writing in that same series and in that same world. And I never thought that would be true. I thought it was going to be a trilogy, but here it is, 15 years of my life, and it's going to end up being over 20 novels in that world. And so you want to pick something. It doesn't have to have that pressure to it. It could just be a standalone, like The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, which came out about a year ago. That there are no rules as to how long, but with every book, we are going to need to sit with it for a while. For some people, you can write books really fast. For some of us, it takes us several years to write a novel. So you want a storyline that even when the energy of the dopamine rush and the excitement of starting new still feels interesting enough to you that you feel like you want to keep exploring that world or those characters or telling that story, because that's what's going to keep you going through the dip, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Another longevity test is to ask yourself, do I really feel interested and connected with these characters? And if not, you can tweak the idea. But if you do know a little bit about the characters, think about whose story you want to tell. Is it the orphaned girl that reminds you of when you used to live in foster care? Is it the story of the 2 lovers that lost each other and now are finding their way back to each other because you also had that story with your grandparents and you feel connected to it? What story, what characters do you feel like you would want to sit with them, get to know them, explore them for potentially months, if not years to come? If you want to, you can rate this as well. So you could have one rating for the emotional charge and a different rating, 0 to 10, for the longevity, like how long you could see yourself sitting with this story. Test number 3 is the story potential test. So what I really mean by this is there enough conflict and stakes to make this an entire novel that's going to be interesting to readers? So every story has to have conflict. Who is your protagonist or your set of protagonists? And what obstacles are they going to come across in your story? You may not at this idea stage have all of that figured out, But just in the premise itself, you should have some idea of what is their goal, and then what's going to be the obstacle or the conflict as to why they don't have their goal. If this is a cozy story, which I know has been gaining in popularity, there might not be a lot of external conflict. It might be very character driven. So think about the type of story that you're writing. But if you're writing a mystery or you are writing a fantasy adventure story, you're going to need loads of conflict. And so think about the genre that this story might belong in and making sure that you have enough ideas for conflict that you can sustain the whole story. Stakes is another way to think of this. So the stakes of your story are what is at stake if your character does not reach their goal. So for example, in my current story, we have Bex, and Bex is running away from the Order of Shadows, which is an evil organization of witches, and in the process gets sent through a mirror portal and living in a world that is called the Shard. And in the Shard, she has to fight to the death in gladiator style games. And what is at stake for her is her life, her freedom, and eventually the lives of all the people she comes to care about in this world. And it becomes a story of good versus evil, which is what most of my fantasy, if not most of everyone's fantasy stories, become over time. So the stakes are there. We've got personal stakes, we have world level stakes, we have friendship and interpersonal stakes. So I can easily point to that and say, yes, there's enough stakes that I have multiple books worth that I can continue to work through. So if you're thinking about your story and you can't think of like, what's at stake for my character? Is it death of some kind? Usually that needs to be what it is. It doesn't have to be actual death, but like in romances, for example, often the stakes are not actual death, but it's like, if I don't open up my heart or if I don't change, I'm going to be stuck in this life that makes me unhappy for the rest of existence. And so the personal stakes are, I have to change or I will internally never be happy or never find the satisfaction that I was reaching for. My heart will never be whole, right? And that is at the core of most romances. So do you have those stakes? Do you have enough conflict as to why these two people can't be together? It doesn't make usually for a great story if you have two people that meet on page one and they instantly fall in love and start a life together. You need some kind of conflict as to why they keep deciding not to be with each other or what conflicts are keeping them apart. And then they have to grow in order to come together. So think about your story in that way. Do you have enough conflict? Do you have enough stakes to make this a whole story? Another way to think about that is there something that my character wants or needs that is not going to be easy for them to get? So in my example, my character wants or needs her freedom, and it's going to be extremely difficult to obtain that. So that checks the box of story potential. Test number 4 is the vibe check. So this is also something we don't always think about, but with something like Rough Draft Challenge, where we're going to be writing the entire month of November, or you have a dedicated time that you're going to be writing, you want to start this book as soon as possible. Think about the vibe of the story and whether it matches where you currently are in your life. If you're going through a period of extreme stress or grief, it might not be the best time to write this huge world building fantasy that's going to be very complex and difficult to write. You might need something that feels a little more cozy or a little bit good for your heart. You might need a romance that you want to write, or you might want to write something that's more character driven. Or you may, if you're processing grief, feel like you want to write a happy story. Or if you're processing grief, you may want to write something that you can really pour your grief into and sorrow. So you might want to write a character-driven story of loss. And so think about where you are right now and what your heart needs, as well as your skill level and what you feel you're capable of. I've told this story before, but when I decided that I was going to write The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, I thought, well, this will be a fast book because it's standalone, and most things I've been writing are long series. The joke was on me with that because it was too complex and it was multiple POVs across dual timelines. It's a very complex story to plot for me at my skill level. And so it took me longer than I expected because I had to raise my skill to the level of the complexity of the book, which took time, and I had to learn a lot and I had to push myself through the hard times. You may not be in a place, if you want to write a book in a month or you want to try to write 20,000 words in a month, to challenge your skill level. Or you might be at a place where you're like, you know what, I really want to push myself to the limits. And so think about and evaluate your story ideas based on, do I have the skill to pull this off? If it's multiple POV, if it's a big world building and you've never done that before, it's probably going to take a higher level of skill. Or if it is a character-driven story and that's usually a weakness for you, that might take a higher level of skill. So try to match your skill with what you currently are at in terms of your emotional bandwidth. The fifth test is the future career test. So since I said at the beginning that we often have this fear of wasting time, if you're going to spend time right now working on a story, working on your skills, you might want to pick something that you could see being your signature series or your signature genre for the rest of your career, or at least for the beginning of your career. So for example, if what you see yourself writing is epic fantasy, big world building, then don't start writing a cozy mystery that has literally nothing to do with your fantasy world building. Now, this comes with the caveat of you may not be thinking about your career yet. You might just be wanting to increase your skill level, have some fun, and that's fine. But if you really want to write something that you will publish or query or submit, then you want to also take it through that lens when you're looking through your ideas and think, okay, which of these ideas really aligns with who I want to be long-term as an author? But of course, this is the one that you can just say, that's not the right test for me right now, if you just really are still in the exploration phase of who you want to be as an author. And instead, go back to that emotional charge and the things that feel exciting to you, because that's the biggest clue that you'll have about who you are as an author. In the end, choose an idea that has good energy, that has good vibes, that fits your current skill level, that makes you feel excited, and that you can immediately start thinking about conflicts and stakes and things that are going to be obstacles to your character. That is where the juice is. And the more excited you are about the story, the more likely you are to stick with it. I will also give you a side tip here, that is to choose and set a deadline for yourself, because you could get stuck in this brainstorming evaluation phase for the next several years. And like I said, this is often why people are bouncing between ideas, because they're like, well, I have all these good ideas, any of these could work. So as soon as this one gets hard, you jump to another one and another one and another one. So we're going to get into that in step 4. But first, in step 3, let's talk about how to get started once you've chosen an idea. But I do highly recommend that you set an absolute deadline for yourself as to when you will choose the idea, and then make a commitment to yourself. Write it down, write a promise, tell a friend, and say, this is the story that I've chosen and I am going to see this through to the end. This is the one. And I will also say, I know I said I was getting to the next one, but I can't stop talking. I will also say that there might be a feeling once you make a choice of, oh no, what if that's not the real one that I wanted? Or once you get started, know that this is normal, because you have cut off all these other possibilities. And there can often be fear that is going to flare up when you've chosen an idea, because that same fear of, what if I've chosen the wrong one? What if this isn't the one that I'll be able to stick to? What if I don't like this idea in 3 months? All those fears are going to come up. But if you are ever going to finish something, you're going to have to learn to face those fears and work through them anyway. So if you followed this process of brainstorming all your best ideas and then running them through these tests, and this is the one that came out best, then you have to trust yourself and you have to stick to it, or you're going to be stuck in that cycle forever and never have a book that's finished. And keep in mind as you go through this process that you can come back to any of those other ideas later, but you will learn so much more by finishing a book than you ever did by starting a book. So commit to the one idea that feels the best, that checks all the boxes, and then say you're going to finish it. And then once it's done, you come back and start a different one, and you will have that ability to write for the rest of your life. So take the pressure off, take the panic off, commit to the idea. And then number 3, let's get started making a plan. Okay, as I'm recording this, we have 1 week until Rough Draft Challenge begins, until November begins. Of course, this advice works for any time in your life. Set a deadline, and then you got to make a plan. Now, I just recently did a video about different types of writing processes, because the truth is that we are all different as writers. We have different combinations of skills, different ways that our brains will work. And so not everybody needs an extensive outline. Some people don't need an extensive outline. Some people really do. Some people are very far in between. So watch that video if you want a little bit more information about how to figure out your writing process and who you are as a writer, and then create a plan based on that. But I'm going to give you a more kind of generic plan if you are still in the final stages of, oh crap, I have to get a story idea ready in the next week. So we're going to create a Preptober mini plan. Okay, so here's what you're going to do for your mini plan. Number one, you are going to take that idea that you highlighted, that you circled, that you chose, that you committed to, and you are going to write a quick 1 to 5 sentence pitch for yourself, kind of like a blurb, but it doesn't have to be something that you show to anyone else. So it could be, we're just going back to that idea because I'm just coming up with this on the cuff, but you could say 5 college students enter into a competition to see who can stay the full night in this haunted house. And each one of them is an influencer or vlogger who has to share what they've learned throughout the night. So that's the beginning of it. But then you want to add into your pitch or your blurb, what's the conflict? But after midnight, all the power goes out and all the doors are locked. Who will survive the night? Something like that. And if you have that, you have the starting of both the premise or the setup of the story, who the characters are, and what is the conflict that they're going to have to face throughout the night. And if you can get those 3 things into a quick blurb, you've got at least the start of a story. And hopefully, as you do that, you're going to start to have ideas flow about, ooh, I can think of a scene that might happen here, a scene that might happen here. And if you do, by the way, just as a reminder, I have an entire Preptober planner that is totally free for you guys. I have created so many resources and have made them free because I know how difficult it can be to get started as a writer. All you have to do is sign up for my newsletter list and you can download all of those different things. So it is at the top. It's called the Rough Draft Challenge Planner or the Preptober Planner. And it will have this sort of mini outline for you. It will have a place for you to write down some ideas that you've been brainstorming, or there's actually an entire place where you can brainstorm and outline your entire novel piece by piece. It's like a 4-page outline. So have at it, go explore it, print it up, and get to work. But if you want to create your mini Preptober plan, we'll get back on track here. Create that 1 to 5 sentence pitch that has your characters, the premise or setup of the story, and what's the conflict that they're going to have to face that will keep them away from their goal. Then I want you to decide your protagonist's name. What is their goal as they get into the story? What is the obstacle that's keeping them from their goal? And what are the stakes? So if, for example, you were writing this story about these influencers going into a haunted house, you might have multiple protagonist names, or you might be having it just in one person's point of view. So that would be a decision that you might want to make up front. So you might say, I'm going to tell it from the protagonist's name, and her name is going to be Sarra Cannon. And so we've got the protagonist's name. Now we need to think of what is her goal. Her goal is to get the best footage for the night and survive this haunted house, right? The obstacle to it is that as soon as they get in, they have this power goes out, they're locked in the house, and people start dying. So that's the obstacle. And then if we have the stakes, is she going to survive? It's death stakes, which is just about the highest stakes that there are. And as you go through the story, the stakes might even raise a little bit, because if this haunted spirit gets out of the house, it could destroy the entire town. Like, you could raise the stakes if you want to. But if you can just name those few things, you've already got a start to your book. Then coming up with a rough sketch or idea of the beginning, the middle, and the end. So as you're thinking about the beginning of the story, just think, what is it that kicks off the story? In this haunted house example, we've got the idea of what kicks it off is they're all invited to this thing, or they all have a professor that assigns it, or whatever it might be, and they go into the house. That is what kicks it off. Now, if you want to think what kicks off the change or the end of the first act, is probably the lights go out and now they're in danger, right? So that's the inciting event, or that key event that locks them into the story. So if you can determine that, how that first act is going to go, you can already be thinking about the scenes, and as many of those bullet points as you can write down, it's going to be golden for you. So you could be saying, okay, they've got to get the assignment, they have to meet each other, they have to get all their equipment together, they have to get to the house. Then once inside the house, they're going to be like setting up, and maybe a few strange things start to happen, but it's going to be that Act 1 doorway where it's midnight, the lights go off, the doors are locked. That's what locks them into the story. That's your entire Act 1 already, and you could go ahead and start writing that tomorrow. Act 2, you need to start thinking about what is that midpoint moment? What's the middle of your story? So we have the beginning. What's going to happen in the middle of the story that's going to change everything, or that's going to create an even bigger obstacle for your characters? So in this case, it could be the first person shows up dead, or it's more obvious that they're in danger. It could be a moment that complicates everything a little bit more. So as they're exploring the house and trying to survive, they discover a door in the basement that leads to another dimension. Like, you can think up anything that makes it more complicated or makes the story a little bit bigger or more dangerous here at the midpoint. So if you can figure out that midpoint, now you might be able to start brainstorming, how do I connect that moment that everything changes, that inciting incident that locks them into the story where the lights went off? How do I connect that to the moment they discover this door in the basement that is where the evil lives, or whatever? You could just start thinking of, okay, well, I need some test scenes where they are put through some tests, where they fail the tests, where they get scared. I could add in some interesting moments where my heroine starts to fall for the nerdy guy that has more YouTube followers than she does. Like, I don't know, you could just start playing around with it. And the more you can begin to flesh that out, you've got the beginning, you have the middle that complicates it, and then you just have to decide in your little rough sketch here, how does the story end? Do they make it out of the house? Do they not make it out of the house? Who makes it out of the house? What do they have to do in order to fight the final evil or defeat that final evil, right? And if you can figure that out or start thinking about how it ends, now you have enough of a story that you can start writing. With this type of mini sketch or rough sketch or making your plan, totally follow your intuition though, because not everybody knows where the story's going. And for some people, the fun is figuring it out as you write. So if you're more of a pantser, or you're more of somebody who just writes out of order like a puzzler, or any of those other archetypes that I talk about in that previous video, then really fully engage in that and go all in and lean into what is coming naturally for you. But if you need a framework, you can follow the ones that I just laid out and try it on and see if it works for you. But if you have in the past noticed that what has kept you from finishing stories and actually seeing it through is that you knew too much about it and then it became boring to you, then don't over plan. I have heard so many people say that, like, I never won NaNoWriMo because I made these huge detailed outlines, and then by the time I started writing, I was no longer interested in the story. So if that's you, think about what has held you back in the past or made it less sustainable for you, and then don't do that anymore. Do the opposite. So maybe this time you just say, I'm just going to decide who the characters are, and then on day one, I'm going to start writing. Then you might find that, okay, I've done that in the past and it worked really well for me up to 25,000 words. So this time I'm going to set aside some time in my plan in the middle of November to replot, because I'm just going to pants the first half of it. And then I know I'm going to need a week to think through what happens next. So making a plan that sets you up for success for the way your brain works, for the way your habits have been in the past, is one of the best things you can do. So give yourself permission to just be yourself. Oh my gosh, 40 minutes in. I was not going to do a deep dive, but here we are deep diving. If you are loving the long videos, please give this a like. Please subscribe to this channel. Also, thank you guys so much for 81,000 subscribers. It still doesn't feel real, but anyway, let's get back to the point, which is probably why some of you clicked on this video. The fourth piece of the plan is actually sticking to the story that you picked. One of the most important things that you can do for yourself is to anticipate the dip. It is totally normal and happens in almost every novel that there will come a point where the book feels like it's a mess, like it's not coming together, like it's no longer interesting, like this isn't what I want to do anymore. There is going to be a dip in your inspiration, in your commitment, in the confidence or clarity that you have in this story. It will come. And if you anticipate it and you know that it's coming, then when you hit it, you can begin to create a path around it. But if you have never been aware of it and you are just like working your way through a story, you hit a point of self-doubt or a dip, and then you just switch to a new story, then that is why you have been stuck in this pattern for potentially years of 50 started books that you never finished. And I know how heartbreaking that can be if what you really want is to be a novelist, an author, a famous person, a full-time author, whatever it may be that you want out of this. It can be heartbreaking to never actually finish. And so one of the most powerful things you can do is anticipate that there will come at some point in this story, usually in the midpoint for me, might be a different place for you, where it just doesn't feel exciting anymore. It feels like suddenly there's all these new shiny ideas. There's other things that would be better. I'm not capable of this. All the self-doubt starts coming. You feel stuck. Any number of those things are going to come. So this time, because you've anticipated it, you are going to have a stick with it toolkit to carry you through those moments instead of giving up on your story. When the dip hits, number one, acknowledge it. Say, oh crap, I'm in the dip. That's what this is. That's why all these other ideas, that's why all this self-doubt, that's why I keep resisting the writing. I am in the dip. And when you give it a name and you acknowledge it, you take its power away. Second thing to do is recommit to this story. Say to yourself, I am in the dip, but I'm going to finish this. This is the one that I chose. I did a good job of going through all the steps that Sarra laid out. I know this story has potential. I'm going to recommit to it. Number three, reignite the spark for it. So the way that you can do this is to remember why you loved it in the first place. So you might need a day off from writing where you dedicate yourself to getting back into the excitement of it. What this can often mean is another brainstorming session. Call up your partner, talk about it in some of our writing sprints, talk about it in the comments. I will brainstorm with you. Come find me on Instagram and start thinking through, okay, well, this is where we are. This idea that I had feels a little bit boring. How can I spice it up? What if I put a bomb in the closet? What if they have a new ghost? What if there's actually a sixth person in the house that nobody knew about? How can I shake this up and make it exciting again? That might be one way to reignite the spark, is to start brainstorming. Allow yourself to go back into that place of what if and excitement and pulling in current events and all those tips that I gave you earlier. Another way to reignite it is to go back and read some of your favorite scenes that you've already written and think, oh man, this is better than I thought. Sometimes that can give you quite a bit of confidence, where you go back and you think, I know I wrote a really good scene when they first get to the house, or I know I wrote a really good scene where these two people meet each other for the first time. Go back and read that and think, I can't give up on the story. There's some really good stuff here. Return to why you liked the story, what you love about these characters, why you wanted to write this type of story in the first place. Journal about it. Go back to the things that you used to love that got you inspired in the first place, and recommit to this story and brainstorming your way through wherever you're stuck. Another thing that you can do is create for yourself before you start your book, before we start November's Rough Draft Challenge, an I Won't Quit toolkit. And this can be really fun to create. So Pinterest board with all of the good things that you can think about your story. It's got inspiration for your characters, inspiration for the house that they're in, or the town that they're in, or the world building, or the fantasy vibes, whatever it is that you're writing. Have that Pinterest board ready and keep adding to it every night as you write, so that when you hit the dip, you can scroll back through that and be like, man, this story is good. We're going to stick to it. Have a music playlist of some of the songs that remind you of your characters, or all that heartbreaking love, or ooh, that exciting fantasy, and listen to that playlist and just begin to imagine and get reignited for the way that you love this story. Another thing that can go in your toolkit is just an inspiration, like clean slate. It can mean, okay, I'm going to take a gist day, a get your shit together day, and I'm going to clean my desk. I'm going to organize my files. I'm going to create some cute note cards. I'm going to put some washi tape on my notes, like whatever it may be for you, but come up with what is my clean slate type of thing. Because it could be that your desk has just gotten messy, your room has gotten messy, or your laptop is running a little bit slow, or you keep forgetting to charge it. Come up with some things that will make the writing process a little bit smoother for you, or will feel a little better in terms of your mood and your vibes. Another thing that can be an I Won't Quit toolkit is to set a reward for yourself. So for example, if you had something like, I don't know, like a planner, or a something that you wanted to go do, like, okay, I really was looking forward to a coffee at Starbucks this morning, but I'm not going to let myself go get a coffee until I've sat down and written another 10 minutes in this story. And you can set cool rewards for yourself. If I don't quit, once I get to the end of this story, I get to go to a night at the beach, whatever it may be, whatever you can afford, and make it something that you can really look forward to. Another thing is, remember you made that list of stories, books, anime, games, other things that you like that are in the genre that inspired you in the first place. Give yourself an entire day to just watch the entire Matrix series if that's what inspired you. Or if you're writing a horror, then watch every horror movie you can get your hands on. Just give yourself that time to read or immerse in other people's work and other people's joy and excitement in that genre, and find your inspiration through that. Whatever it takes to reignite the joy and not give up, because sometimes when we're in the dip, what it really means is we've lost the dopamine, we've lost the excitement, and we just need to reignite and find a new way. So it could be making your work more visual. It could be giving yourself more frequent rewards. It could be going and writing at coffee shops. It could be accountability and getting on with a writing buddy. But whatever you can think of that will help you add to your dopamine, add to the excitement of the story, and get you over the dip, like the hump, I guess is the opposite of a dip, but we'll get you through the dip so that you can come back up and finish the story, is so important. For some of us, if it's that accountability piece, you just need to commit to the community and come to the community and actually post in the Facebook group and say, I am in the dip. Who has some ideas of how to get through it? And let us support you on your way through. But whatever it may be, do not let yourself quit. If you want to see more tips about how to actually finish your novel, I have an entire series here on YouTube that I did this summer about how to finish your novel and stick with it. And there is an entire toolkit that goes along with it. Again, totally free in my resource library. So definitely check that out. Make sure you're subscribed. Subscribe to this channel because we have the Rough Draft Challenge coming up. I'm wearing my fit check for my Rough Draft era hat, but I've got some t-shirts coming. There's some new merch coming this afternoon as well. If you want to come hear me read my most recent fantasy story over on YouTube, that is at Sarra Cannon. The story is called A Mirror of Shadows. And while it is tied to my Shadow Demon saga, you don't need to have read that series before you can come listen to this one. There are 6 episodes up so far, and we'll be taking a week break this upcoming week and then starting it back. So for the Rough Draft Challenge, I will be reading the last 6 episodes of A Mirror of Shadows, but I will be writing the next book in the series, which I have not announced the title for, but I will soon. So we have a couple more videos, at least one more video coming in the Preptober series. Next Saturday, November 1st, we will start the Rough Draft Challenge, and we're going to have an entire day called Double Down Day, where we're going to be basically kicking off the Rough Draft Challenge, and there are probably going to be some live writing sprints here on this channel. So again, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to join the Heart Breathings writing community, all those links are down below, as well as other playlists that I think will help you, a link to join my newsletter list, and you can join the Rough Draft Challenge on our website, roughdraftchallenge.com. All right, longer video than I expected, but I sure hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions or other ways that I can help, please put that down below, because it is my passion to help you get your stories out into the world. And I genuinely care and want to see you be successful. So let's do it together in November. All right, I love you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. See you soon.